Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Vicki Vollweiler, and I'm from College Financial Prep, and I'm here with Wendy Samuelson from Samuelson House. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, thank you, Vicki. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have this terrific topic today about college and divorce.
Right.
And
So we're talking about divorce and college planning. This is for parents who are separated. This is for parents who are already divorced. It's for parents who may even be remarried. But we're all dealing with the topic of divorce and college planning. We're going to be discussing it both from the legal perspective with Wendy as well as the financials, which I'll help with in terms of paying for college and divorce. So tonight we're going to talk about different questions that typically come up with our clients, both on the legal and the financial side. How this presentation came about actually was because Wendy and I were out to lunch one day, and we're talking about the topic, and it was amazing to me the amount of information that Wendy was sharing, that was interesting from a legal perspective. And, likewise, I was sharing with her information that, she wasn't necessarily aware of. So we figured, let's get together to inform the parents. So, please feel free, ask your questions towards the end, during the presentation. They'll be in the chat box, and that way we'll be able to share with everyone. And of course, if you have questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Wendy, Samuelson House, or College Financial Prep. So let's dive in. What's one of the biggest questions that happen? It is your ex obligated to pay for college? So, so Wendy's going to speak to it from a New York perspective. Wendy is from New York. The same answer may not apply in every single state. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you. So that's absolutely correct. Each state has different divorce laws. So I'm a New York divorce attorney. So I'll only be speaking to New York. So if you're in other states, you should absolutely consult with a divorce attorney. Under New York law, college is a gray area. And so what I mean by that is it's up to the court's discretion whether to award college expenses during your divorce. Usually, if your children are very young, the court won't even address the issue until your children are in high school. And you would have to come back to court and ask the court to award you college expenses based on the parents' pro rata share of their combined income. Okay. And the court will use its discretion by looking at the child's grades, the parents' financial resources, whether or not these parents can afford to send their children to private college versus a SUNY school. SUNY is State University of New York. So what we have is called a SUNY cap. So generally, parents whose incomes are under $200,000 a year, a court may cap the amount of the college expenses to a SUNY cap.
And just so everybody's aware, other states also, not every state, but some states do have their own caps. Like I was speaking with somebody in, I believe it was Illinois yesterday, and they also have a state cap similar to New York. So it is common, but it's not mandatory. There are some states
Correct.
that child support ends at 18 and that's it. And the kids are left to fend for themselves, kind of, if they're going to college.
Right.
Now,
In New York, child support goes until age 21. So there are two types of child support. There's the basic child support that the parent must pay each month. Okay. On top of that, there's what's called child support add-ons. And add-ons include the child's medical expenses, as well as education expenses, and college falls under the education prong of that. And add-ons are based on the parent's pro rata share of the income. So, you know, it's even if your case, when your case starts, if your children are very young, the court is not necessarily going to award college expenses now, but you could go for it later. The key
Can I
here
make a
is that
suggestion?
if you settle your divorce case, you may be able to negotiate that expense now rather than worrying about it, you know, in 10 years when your children are of college age.
So I'm going to dive in on that. So I know if somebody divorces and the kids are very young, it is hard to think about, you know, college so far in the future. At the minimum, I would recommend that both parents agree to participate in financial aid applications as required by the colleges. Some colleges do require both parents to submit their information. Just so you know, when you do, when both parents submit information, you're not sharing it with the other parent. You're only sharing it with the college. So the other parent isn't going to be privy to your personal information. So I would do that as a minimum in an agreement if you can get both parents to agree to share in taking part.
But now, quick question, isn't it only now the supporting parent that needs to submit to FAFSA?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Now, is it only the supporting parent?
So for FAFSA purposes, FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. I think we lost Wendy for a second. I think she
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're talking about FAFSA, which is Wendy's big question, actually. So FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid.
Mhm.
In a couple who has divorced, it is one parent who provides their financial information. If that one parent has remarried, then it's the one parent and the new spouse who provides their financial information. This is typically determined by who provides the most support for the child, but it's very honestly, I would need to like go through your financials to determine who that parent should be. Then there's also another financial aid application called the CSS profile. And that is not a government form. That is administered through the College Board, which is the same organization that handles the SATs and AP exams. Some of the schools, colleges that require the CSS profile do require financial information from both parents. If both parents happen to be remarried, then they're looking at financial information, tax returns, and income and assets from 4 parents for the one child. So it depends on the schools that are being applied to, which is why it's so important to be strategic up front with what colleges the child will apply to. It really makes a difference in how much college will ultimately cost.
So
I hope that
Vicki,
answered your question.
yeah. Vicki, it
Okay.
sounds like somebody needs to consult with you in order to determine what schools are best to apply to based on that second application.
Yes, definitely. There are some clients I work with who, based on their situation, I'll just say stay away from it. There are some schools on that do require the CSS profile that, depending on the student, depending on their academic accomplishments, where we may be able to suggest some schools that could work. Like for instance, Vanderbilt University. Vanderbilt does only require one parent, even though they wait a sec, I'm not saying this right. Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt does require only one parent's CSS profile. Um, but you know, Vanderbilt is a top-notch university. The kids need to be able to get into that school. I mean, I actually have a student that has been going to Vanderbilt for virtually free for 4 years. But it takes a lot of strategic planning, and again, the student needs to be able to get into that level college. But there are a few colleges out there that fall in that list. Okay.
Can
So
I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Okay, so what happens to the situation when one of the divorced parent deceased and has an open estate? Will the value of that estate be also taken into consideration?
Wendy, is this for you or for me?
Well,
Oh,
it's a
just a
great
general
question. I don't do trust and estate law. So Vicki, I'm not sure if you're aware if the estate gets considered.
Well, I want to know, I guess, where is the money? Like, whose name is it in?
Okay, so me as the mother, I am the supporting parent. I have the sole custody for two daughters, and their father, unfortunately, deceased after we got divorced. And the money is under the deceased father's estate account.
Are you saying that the money is in trust for the children? Is that it?
It's still, it has not got to that part yet. It's still within the estate. The estate has not been concluded yet.
How many years has that been going on?
Oh, we are still in the process. It's pending with the surrogate court.
I'll
Interesting.
say this, as long as it's not in your name or the kids' names and the kids aren't the beneficiary of a trust, then I wouldn't include it. But if they're the beneficiary of a trust, then it is included as their asset.
Okay, I hear you. Thank you. I
You're
think that
welcome.
answers my question. Thank you, Vicki. Yeah.
Sure.
So what should you do if here's another question. What should you do if your divorce agreement does not provide for college?
Yeah, so first step is shame on the attorney if they didn't put divorce into the agreement. If the children are of college age, we got a real problem. But if the children are really young, normally an agreement should say that we will determine college when the child's a junior in high school. And if the parties are unable to agree to the pro rata shares, they will have to go back to court to have the court determine the issue. Okay. But what I find interesting is that a lot of times what I do with clients when the children are young is I don't want them to wake up when their child's a junior in high school and wonder if either parent has saved money over the course of time. Say the child's 10, they can start planning now by putting money away into a 529 account or other vehicles. And sometimes I get the parents to agree about how much money they're going to put into a 529 account over each year so that there's some security of knowing that the parents have adequately saved.
Okay, before I get into this, I just want to go back to the last question. As far as the estate, really, I should be telling you to go speak to an attorney about it, because I'm not sure where the money is held. And, in terms of FAFSA purposes, you're supposed to report everything, and I'm not sure whose asset it is right now. So I just want to say, you need to kind of clear that up before I can really give you a correct answer.
Right. And generally, as I've had experience with Vicki, a lot of times, I will have my client speak with Vicki. Vicki will be on a conference call and we'll go over some of the issues because, for example, in a divorce, there's an expectation of getting certain assets. So I would advise Vicki, here are the assets that this client is expected to obtain at the end of the case. So in the similar situation, a trust and estate attorney could speak directly with Vicki on a conference call and say, here's what's, going to be in the children's names or what the status of these monies are.
Thank you. Okay, so now getting back to what if the divorce agreement doesn't provide for college? And I'm going to address this on a different level than New York, because some states, as I said earlier, don't even allow for it. honestly, there are some parents that just aren't going to budge. They unfortunately don't want to participate in college. And I'm a huge proponent of communicating with the kids, not divulging everything. They don't need all the nastiness, but I think it's important to tell the kids when they're in high school, this is how much we have saved for college. This is our budget for college. This is what I can afford to do. This is what's saved. Let's work together and meet that goal. And oftentimes, and I'm just using New York as an example right now, this applies to any state. My goal is to pay for a state University of New York school. The kids can apply to wherever they want, and hopefully they'll get lots of merit aid, and maybe the pricing will be in line with a SUNY. So I'm not going to tell kids, you can't go to that school, but work together towards a common goal. It's possible to project costs beforehand. It's possible to see that some $90,000 a year schools will not budge, but there are also many others, especially if families are flexible, for other colleges to come in closer to an in-state university. So, unfortunately, not every parent is going to play nice when it comes to college. And sometimes one parent does end up picking up the lion's share in college costs. Unfortunately, it's what happens in divorce. But certainly try communicating with the kids so that up front, so it doesn't cause hurt right before decision day.
Absolutely.
So I'll say that.
So Vicki, one thing I would like to point out is, as I was saying, child support goes until age 21. Some children don't graduate from college until age 22, okay? If you negotiate in your agreement and maybe your child has an early birthday and they're definitely not going to graduate until 22, you would want your divorce attorney to negotiate that college expenses will be paid until the child's 22, even though the rest of child support might not be paid anymore. So it's real important to, make sure your attorney is aware of your children's birth dates, when they might graduate, because you want that covered. Otherwise, if you go to court and you didn't have that locked in, a court will only award college until 21, and that's it. Okay.
Now, the question with that is, if the child is living on campus, let's say, does the child support, let's say, Barbara said, still go to the mother, or does that go like a 1-for-1 to the tuition?
So as I had pointed out, there's two types of support. So there's the basic support that goes to the parent who is collecting the child support. Wouldn't necessarily say it's the mother, because sometimes the mother is the more moneyed spouse. Maybe the mother's paying the child support to the father. But in your example, if the mother was the lesser money parent and receiving the child support, she would get a set amount per month. And on top of that, college would have to be paid based on their pro rata share of income. The father or the other parent would get a room and board credit against the child support. Room and board being, it would be the dorm, right? Or it could be off-campus housing. So you would be able to deduct that from the amount of the basic child support.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
So something that always comes up is, oh, my kid wants to go to, XYZ school that's going to be, $80,000, $90,000 a year. If they want to go, let them pay for it. Or maybe, can we split it 3 ways between both parents and the child? Now, legally, you can come up with whatever agreement you want, right, Wendy? But let me tell you about practically. So students that go to college freshman year, they're only allowed to take out federal loans up to $5,500. I mean, unfortunately, it's not going to get them that much. So that $90,000 a year example, the kids cannot take out a federal loan for $30,000. they might be able to get a private loan still with a parent, one of their parents as a cosigner. So it doesn't work. So, Wendy, we could certainly talk about this, but financially speaking, it doesn't work to split it 3 ways.
And the law would not require the child to pay for it. They require the parents to pay.
For
So
New York State.
in New York State, if the court decides, in fact, that the parents obviously can afford college, they will require them to pay their pro rata share, but they wouldn't require the child to take out loans or the parents to pay for those loans. It's what you
Okay.
do on your own is up to you. So, if you all agreed that well before, and this doesn't go to court, you agree outside of court that this is what's going to happen, then you can, if you have that agreement in writing, it'll be enforceable.
I'm going to apologize. That's Maggie barking. It's real life.
It's
I
real
have,
life.
I have a question. How common is it for a parent to limit their contributions to what the New York State tuition and room and board is in a divorce agreement?
So I think what you mean is how common is it to get a SUNY cap?
Yes, correct.
So it's not a common or uncommon thing. It's really based on the parent's income. So generally, I find that if your income is under 200,000 a year, you're more apt to get the SUNY cap. But the court also, so the court's looking at your income, but they're also looking at, did the parents go to private colleges? Is the child's grades good enough that, the school that the child's applying to would provide a much better education than a SUNY school? And other factors, of course, but
And how much is the SUNY cap generally as a ballpark?
That's for
SUNY cap,
Vicki.
yeah, a SUNY cap is typically at one of the universities. So using, Binghamton, Buffalo, Albany,
Right.
or Stony Brook.
Right.
The total price for SUNY is at about, I think it's like $29,000 now.
Yeah, I was going to
The
say about
tuition-
30. Yeah.
The tuition portion is only about 7,000 with about 3,000 and change in fees. So everybody here that's from New York, there's the Excelsior Scholarship, which I'm bringing this up because if your household is below 125,000, then the household qualifies for free tuition. That's the Excelsior Scholarship. It's not free room and board. It's not, there's still the fees that have to be paid, but it's a free, $7,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question. So oftentimes people will ask me, if I fill out FAFSA, for the student, are they then the sole parent that's responsible for student loans? The answer is no. Both parents can still take out parent plus loans for their child. So, don't think it's all going to fall on just one parent. That's not the case. Of course, if your divorce agreement is different, you may want to go back to your attorney and speak to them. So also a lot of times people ask me, are the colleges going to look at my divorce agreement, and see, I'm making this up. Well, they're supposed to pay 90% and I'm only supposed to pay 10%. In maybe this many instances, if that, will the college ask to look at a divorce agreement? Imagine the colleges are dealing with thousands of applicants and they have thousands upon thousands of students. No, they don't have the time to start going through everybody's divorce agreement and start finding the right pages. And they really don't care who's paying what, as long as they get paid.
Right.
So it's possible for one parent to pay with a credit card, another parent to be on a payment plan, or somebody taking out loans, and, each parent can do whatever they want. You know, as long as they're in agreement with paying however they're going to pay to equal the total bill. You know, and speaking of, for parents who don't know, you have to sign some FERPA papers. I don't know what FERPA stands for, but it allows you or gives you permission to speak on the child's behalf about their account. So even though you're paying the bill, you need your child's permission to speak to the college about their account and make sure everything's okay. So just wanted to share that with everyone.
That's because they're over 18, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so same thing, by the way, for just something that has come up for some of my clients, you know, same thing for medical issues.
So it's like a power of attorney?
The doctor at the school can't talk to you unless the child signs a waiver. So just to be aware, 18 is the age of majority, which is sort of interesting because while you can't speak to anybody about your child unless you have permission, you're still required to pay child support until 21. So I find it a little bit of an interesting.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about this. You know, what happens legally, it does not, wait, what happens legally, what happens on your tax returns, and what happens in terms of financial aid don't always jive with one another. You know, for instance, like where it may be best for you to save money in your child's name, you know, for tax purposes. For financial aid purposes, it's better for you to have all your money in the parent's name. I mean, it's just different rules apply. And I am not saying that you should put all the money in your parents' name. Speak to your accountant to do whatever to, you know, make sure what's best for your specific situation.
Right.
So let's keep going with some questions. If somebody gets remarried, and let me tell you, I always advise people don't remarry till after your children finish college, because it could impact you heavily. The schools are now going to look at the households, you know, total income and assets in your tax returns. And then I get questions, well, what if we file our taxes separately? Well, when you file your taxes separately, you're still saying married filing separately. And that automatically triggers the financial aid applications to look for the other parent. There's no hiding it. So seriously, don't get remarried till after the children are done with college, if possible. You know, another thing, you know, will the colleges take into consideration that you're divorced? Well, yes, certainly on the financial aid applications, they'll take into consideration that you're divorced. You know, somebody once said to me, and I'm divorced. I don't know if everybody realizes or not. I'm divorced. I've been through this personally. I've been through this professionally. I get it. And I remember somebody once said to me, oh, you're divorced. You're going to save a lot of money on college. It doesn't work that way. It goes by your household income. So you can have one person that earns $100,000 in the household. You can have two people that earn $50,000 in the household, you know, each. So it goes by the household income and assets.
So hold on, Vicki, I got a question then.
Sure.
So you said don't get remarried, but what if you're just living with someone that you're not married to and they're in the household?
Are they on the tax return though?
On the tax returns, they would say that they're divorced and that there's no, right? They're not remarried.
Right. So no,
how does that work?
It could just be a roommate.
Right. But
Yeah.
does the college financially consider the roommate or a romantic partner's
No, they
income
don't.
if
They
they're in
don't
the
ask for that.
household?
They don't ask for that information.
Okay. So
Don't
you
get
could say,
remarried.
I'm just not marry them.
Right.
Okay. Which, by the way, you should consider a prenup if you're going to get remarried. To protect, I mean, just, you know, and all, all kidding aside, you want to make sure that your children are protected. And a lot of times people don't realize what their financial legal rights and obligations are if they're going to be married. You know, their new spouse will have a 1/3 elective share to inherit So, that may take money away from your children. And so a lot of people come to me and they actually have a waiver of spousal benefits in the prenup.
Okay. Why don't we dive in? I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Sure.
So why don't we see what's there? And then, so somebody wrote, I'm divorced since November 22 with full custody of my daughter. My ex pays 45% of child support. I pay the remaining 55%. So I provide more support. Does this mean that only my income will be used as the FAFSA? Or will her dad be needed as well? It's important because he earns 4 times what I earn. So if you are providing more financial support for your child, so I'm making up a very simplistic, say the other parent provides $1,000, but between your mortgage, your real estate taxes, food, clothes, the share that you're spending for your child is $1,200, then you're the one that's providing more financial support. Forget about exactly what's in the paperwork, but if you just, if you tally things, how much have you spent? And the one who's spending more should be the one who's completing FAFSA. Now, unfortunately, or I don't know who knows this. So last year, the FAFSA Simplification Act came out. For those of you with high school seniors, you probably heard about it from your friends that are a year older. It was a nightmare with the implementation. I'm sure you're aware how the government was delayed with everything, which impacted the colleges, which impacted the letting the students know about their acceptances and award packages. And it was just, it was awful. So hopefully this year will run much smoother. FAFSA will, for everybody, FAFSA will open this year, and so will CSS Profile on October 1st, as it is supposed to. Last year, it didn't open until December 31st, and there were lots and lots of glitches that happened for months. Anyway, getting back to the question. So yes, in this instance, the mom will be the one reporting on FAFSA. However, depending on the schools that the child is applying to, it's possible that the CSS profile may also be needed. So it really depends on the college list. And then both parents' information may be needed depending on the schools. So in situations like that, when you're saying that the other parent earns a lot more money, it may be beneficial to avoid certain schools when developing a list. I when I do work with clients, strategically we'll put together a college list, because the end goal for me is always to help them save as much money as possible. I was just sharing with Wendy about a family, a divorced family I was working with this year, that was able to save $50,000 for freshman year. And they're divorced, and mom works, dad is recently retired, but still has a very healthy pension. And they were able to save lots of money. Does it happen for everyone? No, it depends on the schools and where the children get in, and the family's finances. But anyway, so just wanted to say that.
And what was it about that couple that allowed them to save the 50,000?
Every school uses a different formula. So you want to know something? If it was a different school, I don't think it would have been as favorable. But I think it's absolutely wonderful the way it worked out for them. And it's because every school uses a different formula, and it's possible to project beforehand, before your child even submits applications, to see what the numbers may look like. So you have an idea of what your costs will be. It's important to plan in advance. Just so everybody's aware, I don't help with 529 plans or investments. I don't help people save for college. I help people save money on the cost of college, so that late stage college funding. That's my role.
As much financial aid as possible.
Well, it's financial aid, it's scholarships,
And
it's
scholarships, yeah.
negotiating with the colleges and, getting them to offer more in merit aid. or filing appeals. You know, when there's a divorce, depending on when the divorce occurs, or depending on even when the separation occurs, it may be possible to still save more money. For instance, this year's seniors, high school seniors, are going to, the parents are going to be using their 2023 tax returns to fill out financial aid forms. How much may have happened since 2023? You know, so things change, finances change, it happens. And it's possible to use it to your advantage.
So Vicki, I have some questions for you. So do you pick up if you're receiving child support and spousal support, and you're the recipient of that, do you report that as your income for purposes of the FAFSA form?
Child support, yes. Spousal support, no. So that may be something, you know, that can be, you know, considered.
That's interesting. So you may
Yes.
want to structure a package that's, you know, maintenance high and child support low, just for the purposes of
Right,
applying.
right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you have to look at all the numbers and see how everything pans out, and then consider what types of schools the child may be likely to apply to, and see how it all fits.
Now, the tax laws have changed since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So maintenance, otherwise people know it as alimony or spousal support, is not deductible by the payor, right? And it's not something that you pay taxes on as the recipient. But here, you're telling me in a different scenario, when you're applying for financial aid, they're not considering the maintenance. So that's something to keep in mind for sure.
So when they say that again?
Wendy, I think he asked if you can repeat that.
So under the law, you're not paying taxes on the child support or spousal support that you receive.
Wait, is this New York or federal law?
This is New York law.
Okay.
Okay. But you know, for purposes of college, what you're telling me, Vicki, is that the spousal support's not going to be considered as the
Spousal support
recipient's
shows
income.
up on your tax return, right?
No.
Huh. Okay, so the federal forms do not ask for spousal support. They only ask for child support.
Right.
The federal financial aid forms.
So interesting. So yeah, so it's you know, you
Yes,
could play around with how you settle the case if you know your child's going to be in school in the next year or two.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, all very interesting things to consider. So let's go back to this. If dad by default contributes more financially, he pays child support and all costs are split pro rata shares. He and his current spouse would need to fill out FAFSA. Do I do anything for FAFSA? It didn't seem like I would based on the FAFSA instructions. So no, dad would be filling out FAFSA in this instance. But again, it depends on the schools that the child applies to, because you may be asked to fill out a non-custodial CSS profile application. So you won't need to do anything on FAFSA, but you may have to do a CSS profile. So let's see what else. Will I be asked about my spousal support on the FAFSA? Okay, so we just discussed that. Not sure if my settlement documents only have my ex paying for child support through her high school graduation. Does the FAFSA ask for past child support or future child support, or both? It asks for your child support in the most recent year. However, when there are changes, when there's a child support modification, in this case, it just stops. When there's an illness, when there's a job loss, when there's anything that impacts a household financially, it is possible to file an appeal with the college. And they'll review it, you'll provide documentation, and it is possible to have your costs lowered based on that review.
Mhm. And Vicki, are they considering the party's assets or just their income?
Most of the time it's income and assets, but like I was talking about specifically for New York now, the Excelsior Scholarship, and that's just income. So if a family earns less than 125,000, then you qualify for the Excelsior Scholarship. So that they don't look at assets. Do you have to apply for FAFSA every year? Yes. Every year, usually October 1st, is when it opens. It's not due October 1st, but that's when it opens for the following school year.
When is it due?
So that usually varies by school. Most often you have a really, really long time. The general rule of thumb is to try to get it in as soon as possible, because for merit scholarship purposes, the schools, have imagine a pot of money to give. And then the longer you wait, the pot gets smaller and smaller. So a lot of the schools like to see people submitting financial aid applications, even if they're looking for merit scholarship money. So get it in as soon as it's possible.
So a
Um,
question for you.
yes.
Does applying for financial aid hurt your chances of getting into the school? And should
So
you wait till the second year after you've gotten in already?
Well, okay, so that's an interesting question. I was actually just discussing this with a client the other day. And what I told them, they were talking about their child's top choice school, and it was a reach. Um, what I said to them was, okay, so this school, it's $80,000 plus. And I said to them, if your child applies early decision, this is their top choice school, that's what they want. It's a binding agreement that your child is going to go there before you even necessarily know what the financials are. Can you afford to pay whatever it is that they're going to tell you to pay? If the answer to that is no, and you need financial aid, do not apply early decision. Do not commit to that top choice college. Certainly, if you can apply early action, apply early action, apply regular decision. Do not apply early decision.
Can you explain the difference for those who don't know what early action is versus early decision?
So early decision is when your child applies to one college. This is their top choice school that they want to go to. They automatically know that's their dream school. The problem with it, though, is that you sign this contract saying that if you get accepted, you're going to withdraw your applications to every other school, and you don't know what the financials are going to be. So, for instance, I had a mother and a son that they only wanted to go to Syracuse. And that was fine. They did an early decision. We projected numbers beforehand. Um, it was in the realm of possibility. And okay, they were going to apply early decision. Well, then the child gets in, and then eventually they get their bill or statement to see what their costs are. And it was like $10,000 or $15,000 above what our projections were. Now, fortunately, we saved those projections that we ran, and we, complained. And yes, they reduced it a little based on, what we did, but they didn't reduce it all the way. My point is, if you can't afford, the unknown, don't apply early decision. Early action, there's no commitment beforehand. Regular decision, same thing. There's no commitment. I think it's important to wait till you have all the financials, compare apples to apples, negotiate with the colleges, see if you can get some more, something I do all the time. I'll be the first one to say I'm not a lawyer, but when I'm negotiating with a college, I'm building a case as to why the student should get more in funding.
I think you need
Yes.
to also answer the question, though, does it hurt your chances of being accepted if
It
you
does-
show
it
that you need the
potentially-
money?
Yeah, it potentially could. But if you can't afford it, don't do it. So yes, it potentially, your admission chances could go down. It's an awful system, but don't do it if you're going to be, that much further in debt and can't afford it.
Right.
People still need to live. Okay,
Uh,
let me.
May I ask you a question on what you just said?
Sure.
When you said you negotiate with the school to see if you can improve the school's package,
Right.
what points are the schools sensitive to that make them responsive to your request?
They certainly want to know what your other offers are. That's a biggie. So, I'm always working with the, it's important how you build the list of colleges that's being applied to.
So you're saying that you would let them know, well, these other colleges offered X, Y, and Z monies, and you should match it, because if you don't, then we're not going to go to your school.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I have a way that I do, my negotiating and working with the parents and getting the information that I want. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with what other colleges offered.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to make sure I get all the questions that were in the chat.
Well, while you're looking at that, I could speak to the question that a lot of people might be thinking about but don't want to ask. What happens if your spouse doesn't pay?
Very true.
You have a court order that says you have to pay, but the spouse doesn't pay. So in that particular case, you have to begin what we call enforcement proceedings. You have to notify the spouse that in default of the judgment of divorce or the agreement, whatever you have, okay? They generally, sometimes your agreement has a specific protocol that you have to follow regarding a default. So it may say you have to send a notice, you give them 10 days to cure. And if they don't cure that default, then the next step is to go to court to get a money judgment against the spouse. And that money judgment will run 9% legal interest. Okay, and there are other enforcement remedies that you can also employ, which includes suspending professional licenses, asking that the spouse be incarcerated, having them post security. So these are things that you would want to speak to your divorce attorney about, how you can move ahead to enforce.
So there's a question here. As private schools, need-based aid varies quite a bit between a typical single income and two income households. Is there any recourse if the custodial parent remarries, blowing up the potential need-based financial aid? Well, that's why the financial aid forms are done yearly, because yes, lives change. Some people, they get a job and they're earning 3 times the amount that they were in the prior year. Other times you get married, or somebody, loses a job, or something happens, life changes and finances change. So no, there's no recourse. If a parent decides to remarry, the school's just going to consider, the new financial situation and awarding aid, if any.
Mm-hmm. So Vicki, I have a question. What if somebody voluntarily leaves their job? Maybe they thought they, just burned out in their career and they don't want to work anymore. How do the colleges look at that? Does it have to be a firing, or can you voluntarily leave your job and still?
No, they don't look at that. If you're just not employed anymore, you're not employed anymore, and there's no more income.
So they would just strictly look, so you could technically.
I mean, they'd want to see, potentially, they'd want to see a separation letter or something from where they used to work. But yeah, no, they don't I mean, people retire, people, people do what they do. This is kind of like that they're not going to start going through everybody's divorce agreement. Like they don't have the manpower to go through everybody's lives.
So potentially you could take a year off from work.
Yeah,
You had sufficient funds to do that.
right.
And
Definitely.
say your income is zero.
If you have sufficient funds to be able to live.
Right.
Right. So, everybody does what's best for them.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, we answered that one. Are the appeals for events that affect the household financially, child support, stopping job loss, etc., through the school or the federal government? No, each school, so yeah, that would be done individually with the schools. So for instance, if somebody has a student in college and there was a separation, divorce, a loss, of a parent or something, yes, it's possible to then ask the school to reconsider your financial information to do something. I'm not guaranteeing that the school will do something, but it's possible that they will based on their review of, the specifics. Because again, everybody's income and assets are different. So, even with a change, income or assets may still be too high to warrant any financial aid. So it all depends on the individual situation. In these instances, there's no way I can make, an exact determination. You mentioned the 2023 tax return will be used for current high school seniors. So the fact that we're divorcing in 24 and finances are not what they were in 23 won't come into, not exactly. Not exactly in regard to this question. Wait, I just lost the question. Shoot, where'd it go? Oh, the one regarding settlement documents in 2020. Wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong one. So if you divorce in 2024, you're providing 2023 tax returns, but we're talking about this whole topic of appeals, and it is possible to file an appeal. If that's something that anybody needs help with, I do this all the time. So yes, it can be done. But again, depending on the school, depending on all the financials, this person that submitted the question, you may be earning, I'm making this up, $300,000 a year. You're still not going to get any aid, even with the change in household status. So it really depends on a lot of factors.
So Vicki, we have 2 minutes to wrap up. So do you have any closing thoughts for us for today?
Closing thoughts. Yeah, this is going to sound corny, but really, I can't stress it enough. Communicate with your child early on. Try to communicate with, the other spouse early on. Try to all get on the same page. I've seen too often May 1st is college decision day of senior year. And the week before, like last week of April, the parent or parents realize they can't afford to send their kid to their dream school. The parents are upset. The kid is upset. Like so much of that could have been avoided by having conversations earlier on. So, while I know we're talking about financial and legal stuff, I really do think a lot of the softer skills also need to come into play also to manage the whole process.
I would absolutely agree with that. I like to see parents, meet at the coffee shop if they have to, or, have a sit down and, talk about their child's goals privately, not in front of the child, of course, and, talk about what they can afford and what they're able to do. But sometimes you do have a parent who is not cooperative, who's mean-spirited, Generally, those are narcissistic personalities. And that's, you know, when you see that there's a major conflict, it's really important to see an attorney right away, because it takes time to make a motion to the court to have your spouse be responsible for a portion of the college expenses. And so, you know, the court system is slow. So you want to do this early enough on, at least, you know, 6 months out before you're even, you know, thinking of the application process, because sometimes it takes that long. It may be a question of the court can't decide on motion papers alone and has to set this down for a hearing. And so, you know, the hearings can be, you know, postponed months out. So you really want to do this early enough on. I would say sophomore year is a good time to do it. Junior year of high school, you know, to get that process going, and just in case you're unable to get the cooperation that you need.
I'm
Okay,
just going to answer this one last question, and then, because I see it in the chat and I don't want to ignore. If the parents live in different states, is there any discretion about who fills out the FAFSA? They're talking about for in-state tuition purposes. No, it goes by whichever parent provides more financial support for the child. So that being said, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. You know, certainly if you have any legal questions and you're in New York, reach out to Wendy at Samuelson Hause. If you have any questions about the college process, whether it is college funding, college applications, essay prep, scholarships, student loans, anything to help with saving money on the cost of college, you know, feel free to reach out. College Financial Prep. Find us on the internet at collegefinancialprep.com.
and you can find my contact information, but I'll give it to you now if anybody wants to write a phone number down. It's 516-294, all sixes. Don't laugh. Yes. They gave us that number, 6666. And you can find out more about our firm at Samuelson Hause. House is spelled HAUSE.net. Happy to answer any questions. And I wanted to wish all of the parents much joy and success as your children embark on this journey of college. It's a very exciting time for you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.